Hey, what's up, you guys? Thanks for joining me. Welcome. This is my first video, so excuse my setup and whatever else that I'm gonna get better at. If you're here through random YouTube searches or suggested videos, then let me tell you, you might be into some weird shit. I should probably not cuss too much on here. Anyway. I'm just joking. You guys are probably here because I lured you here through my Instagram or Facebook or social media. I'm pretty much just on those. Anyway, I'm going to be telling this story about this guy and how that happened. And yeah, I hope you enjoy it, the story, because it is pretty tragic. So maybe don't enjoy it. I don't know. Anyway, this happened in Rocky Point, Mexico, Puerto Peñasco, which is a popular destination spot I see through my Instagram. And it was very fun. We had we did a whole bunch of different activities, and then lounged a lot at the resort, which was beautiful. Las Palomas, I think it was. I highly recommend it. I do not recommend the racers, doom bugging, because Anyway, that is how I injured myself. We rented a very cool looking doom buggy, one of the more expensive ones that are available on through the various vendors along the beach and rest of the city. And basically, we rented the biggest guy on the beach, and we went off-roading. It was a four seat doom buggy. I was in the back with my girlfriend, and while my father drove and my little brother in the passenger seat, and it was cool. We did some crazy stuff on it, a little dangerous, but nothing that excuse me, that I hadn't come across off-roading. My dad drove, my brother drove. And finally, on our way back, the sun was setting and our hour was almost over, who knows. I took the wheel to everyone's not surprise. What I'm trying to say is I made everyone nervous because I'm a little crazy. Anyway, I took the wheel, and because I am me, I floored it. And boy, did that thing take off. It had a kick to it. There was an oncoming buggy. It was still pretty far, like I wasn't gonna crash into it or anything, but regardless, I turned a little bit hard to my left, and the buggy started to flip over, and I braced out with my left arm because I believed myself strong enough to stop a doom buggy with 4 people in it from flipping over. No, I didn't think I was that strong, but apparently I did, because I did that. Anyway, the doom buggy kept on going, it kept on rolling, and my arm was caught underneath. Immediately I felt this warm sensation in my arm that I then later found out to be blood gushing. Another sensation I felt was the immediate swelling of my arm. I felt like it was 10 times its normal size. It didn't hurt particularly, but it felt just numb and enormous. Anyway, I laid down. My father, with some quick thinking, put a tourniquet around my armpit and shoulder to stop the bleeding, because it was, I kid you not, just like gushing blood. That tourniquet really kind of slowed the bleeding to more of a mild leak, and we waited for the ambulance. Felt like forever that I waited. I was just kind of telling myself to stay awake, don't fall asleep. You might not wake up, don't fall asleep. I just told my brother, talk to me. My girlfriend, talk to me. My dad was losing it. Thinking about that moment is probably the most emotional for me. Just because of what I put them through. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the ambulance came for me, and they put me on the stretcher and they took me into the ambulance. I remember very clearly that it was a green ambulance, which I had never seen before. But they put me in there and they took me on to the closest clinic. My father jokes that the doctor just seemed way in and out of his head. You know, he just had no idea what to do. He started cleaning my wounds, and he sutured the blood vessels that were exposed in my arm. Just for a quick visual, my arm was about 2/3 ripped open at the elbow level, so it was holding on by about 1/3 of arm stuff. Yeah, so the plan was to airlift me to the United States to get proper medical attention, but a storm came in, a storm that did not let me be airlifted. So plan 2 was drive me up to the Border Patrol crossing, or the border crossing, in the Mexican ambulance, and transfer me over to an American ambulance, which would then drive me up to the hospital. Good plan. They drove me up to the border. However, the American ambulance was not there. They were about 30 minutes out, stuck, because the road had flooded because of the storm. So the next plan was to have the Mexican ambulance cross a border and drive up to the American ambulance so that I could be switched over. However, the Border Patrol agent wasn't too on board, and he just said, nope, you're gonna have to wait. You're gonna have to wait. So we waited and waited, and at about 11 p.m. is when that particular border crossing closed. Some of them close if there's not high traffic, and he had a change of heart before closing. Who knows why? But he decided to escort us in the Mexican ambulance to the American ambulance. And finally, I was switched over to the American ambulance after half an hour. And there's a few things that I want to mention here. First off, night and day in like the ambulances. You know, one seemed barely sanitary, while the other one seemed like completely sterile. When I got to the American ambulance, was the first time I remember receiving any kind of pain medication throughout this whole ordeal. And let me remind you, it had been hours since the initial incident. Really quick, that just kind of the differences in healthcare are just immense between at least that part of Mexico and in the United States. And I don't know, sometimes we forget, you know, as Americans, that we have emergency access to such good healthcare. But this isn't a political video, so let's get off that really, really fast. I don't know why I did that. Anyway, another thing I wanted to mention is that it was kind of crazy how well I think I handled myself while my arm was exploded. And you know, I remember even joking with the first aid paramedics on the Mexican side, you know, just to try and lighten the mood about me possibly losing my arm. And you know, no pain medication this whole time until I got to the American ambulance. Anyway, let's get back to where we were. I get transferred over to the American ambulance, and they give me some kind of opiate through an IV, and that was amazing. That made me almost forget about my arm, and it allowed me to knock out. I woke up maybe a few times, but you know, barely conscious. And the next thing I actually really remember is waking up in the hospital. I was told by my surgeon that uh, she worked on my arm about 11 hours along with two other surgeons. Uh, um, they reconnected blood vessels, reconnected tissue, I guess, reconnected some nervous tissue. When I woke up, my arm was still intact, somewhat. It had metal rods, 3 metal rods that were keeping everything in place, prevent me from moving it really all too much. And it was extremely painful. It took a few more surgeries before we decided that amputation would be the best way to go. Anyway, that's for later stories. That's kind of how all of this happened and left me without half my arm. Really quick, I want to end on a high note. I wanted to say that this year had been great for me. It was on the road to concluding as like the best year of my life, with my MMA career taking off, and just I was in a good place, and then this happened, and it just set my life spiraling out of control and spiraling down. But I have made it a goal of mine to get this back on track to being the best year of my life. And although I may have lost some of my opportunity to pursue a certain career, that doesn't mean that my life is over or done or is going to have any less value. I'm extremely excited to begin seeking out new passions, developing new talents, and just getting my life back in order and recovering first and foremost. And I'm very confident that I'm going to be able to pull this all together to get back on my grind, for lack of better words. And I want to conclude this year as the best year of my life. And even though I've had this tragedy, I hope that my tenacity towards my goals can help any of you guys who might be a little bit insecure or unsure about pursuing anything that you might be interested in, or that you have been pursuing but have been one foot in, 1 foot out. I want to demonstrate that I can do it, and hopefully you can too. With that said, I'm out. This is hurting, so I'm gonna go lay down. All right, peace out.